When police finally forced open the basement door of the Miller home, they expected to find storage boxes, maybe a workshop, nothing more. Instead, what they discovered in the flickering light of that small suburban basement would haunt every officer who stepped inside. It was the smell that hit them first. Rotting wood, chemical cleaner, and something else. Something human. When investigators later pieced together what had been happening under that roof for years, one question would linger over the entire town. How could a husband, a father, a man everyone trusted keep something so sick, so hidden for so long? If this story shook you already, stay to the end, because what police uncovered in that house wasn't just one crime. It was the beginning of something much darker. Subscribe to Cold Case Secrets, where we uncover the truth behind the world's darkest mysteries. It started in Maple Hollow, Ohio, a small, quiet suburb where everyone still waved to their neighbors and where crime was something you watched on the evening news, not something that happened on your own street. Rachel Miller, 34, was known as the kind of woman who never missed a bake sale or a PTA meeting. She worked part-time at the local library and spent most of her days raising her two kids, Emma, 8, and Noah, 5. Her husband, Daniel Miller, was a high school history teacher, charismatic, easy to like, the kind of guy who always had a story ready. Everyone called him Mr. Miller, even outside school. To neighbors, they looked like a picture-perfect American family. But behind closed doors, small cracks were beginning to show. Rachel often described Daniel as distant. He'd come home late, sometimes smelling like motor oil or chemicals. He said he'd been working on school projects, helping with theater sets, or volunteering at night classes. Rachel never questioned it. He was a good man, everyone said. But one night in March 2018, that trust began to fracture. Rachel had gone to do laundry in the basement, a place Daniel usually kept locked. He said it was because of tools and paints that could be dangerous for the kids. But that night, he'd forgotten to take his keys with him to bed, and Rachel decided to unlock the door to grab a basket of towels. She immediately noticed the smell. Bleach sharp, stinging. And underneath it, something sour, like metal and decay. She called out, "Dan," but got no answer. As she stepped further in, she saw something that made her stop cold, a set of metal hooks embedded in the ceiling beams, and next to them, a wooden work table lined with knives, not kitchen knives, but surgical-grade scalpels and bone saws. Beside it, a camera sat on a tripod, still recording. Rachel's hands shook as she touched the table. There were faint stains on the dark, uneven wood. She didn't want to believe it was blood, but her gut already knew. She backed away, locked the door again, and went upstairs. That night, she didn't say a word to Daniel. She couldn't. She just watched him eat dinner with the kids, the same calm, smiling man he'd always been, and wondered what kind of secret he was keeping below their home. Over the next few weeks, Rachel quietly started watching him. Daniel would leave the house after midnight, saying he needed to clear his head. He'd take his old truck and return hours later, covered in dirt or smelling faintly of disinfectant. Rachel followed him once, tailing his truck through the dark roads on the edge of town. He pulled into an abandoned property near the woods and disappeared inside for over an hour. The next morning, news broke of a missing woman from a nearby town, a 27-year-old named Lena Brooks, last seen leaving a gas station just miles from where Daniel's truck had been. Rachel's stomach turned. It couldn't be a coincidence. She went to the police, but when they questioned her about what she'd seen, she froze. What if she was wrong? What if this was just paranoia? They'd think she was trying to ruin her husband's life. So she said nothing. And for a few months, life seemed to return to normal. Until the disappearances started again. Between 2018 and 2020, 4 women went missing across 3 counties, all young, all traveling alone, all vanishing near the same stretch of highway. The media called it the Hollow Route Mystery. Police suspected a long-haul truck driver or transient worker, but nothing fit. There were no consistent tire tracks, no pattern to the victims. Each woman was last seen at night, then gone. By then, Rachel had started keeping a private journal, documenting Daniel's strange habits, his late nights, his secret basement, the way he'd sometimes come home with scratches on his arms or a duffel bag he never let her touch. In one entry, dated August 14, 2020, she wrote, "He's been quieter lately. I can tell he's hiding something again. I found a new padlock on the basement door. He said it's for safety. I think it's for me. Still, She couldn't bring herself to call the police again. Not yet. Everything changed on October 3rd, 2020. That morning, Daniel told her he'd be going on a school retreat for the weekend. But when Rachel checked the school's online calendar, there was no retreat scheduled, not even close. So that night, after he left, she broke into the basement again. This time, the room looked different. Cleaner. Almost sterile. But in the corner half covered by a tarp, she saw a storage freezer. One she'd never seen before. She hesitated for a long time before she lifted the lid. When she finally did, she screamed. Inside were trash bags, layers of them, tightly wrapped, and beneath that, something pale and unmistakably human. Rachel ran upstairs, locked herself in the bathroom, and dialed 911. When officers arrived, Rachel was shaking and barely coherent. She kept repeating, "It's not him, it can't be him." Detectives obtained a warrant and opened the freezer. Inside, they found human remains later confirmed to be those of 2 missing women from the Hollow Route disappearances. Both had been carefully dismembered and stored in sealed plastic bags. But the discovery didn't end there. As investigators combed through the rest of the basement, they found digital hard drives hidden inside hollowed-out books, each containing video footage of Daniel's so-called projects. Hours upon hours of recordings documenting his crimes. He wasn't just killing. He was studying it. When police attempted to locate Daniel, they discovered his phone had been left behind, wiped clean. His truck was gone. An APB went out statewide. Within 24 hours, news outlets were broadcasting his face, labeling him the Hollow Route Killer. Rachel and her children were moved to protective custody. The small town of Maple Hollow turned into a media circus. Neighbors who once admired Daniel now spoke of the signs. They'd missed his interest in true crime, his fascination with anatomy, his habit of volunteering for local search parties. But Daniel wasn't found. Not for months. Then, in January 2021, a hunter near the West Virginia border reported finding a burned-out truck deep in the woods. The VIN matched Daniel's. Inside, police found traces of blood later identified as his and a note, scorched but still legible. It read, "You think you found everything. You haven't." Forensic teams continued digging through Daniel's hidden hard drives. What they uncovered next changed the direction of the investigation completely. The files contained footage dating years before his marriage, dating back to his college years in Illinois. Police found evidence linking Daniel to unsolved disappearances in 3 different states. Each followed the same pattern. Isolated victims, abducted near highways, vanished without a trace. It became clear that Daniel Miller wasn't who he said he was. His real name was Ethan Graves, a man connected to at least 6 other missing persons cases dating back to 2009 and who had supposedly died in a car crash 10 years earlier. He had built a second life under a new identity, married Rachel, started a family, and continued his crimes without anyone noticing. The FBI called it one of the most meticulous deceptions they'd ever seen. But the biggest revelation came from a single hidden folder marked simply 4R. Inside were videos of Daniel talking directly to the camera, addressing Rachel. He spoke calmly, almost lovingly. He said he did it all for control, for truth, and that she was the only one who would ever understand. At the end of one video, he smiled and said, "If you're watching this, then you know now. But I'm not gone, Rachel. You'll see me again." Rachel's testimony helped authorities piece together the full scope of Daniel's, or rather, Ethan's crimes. By 2022, he was linked to at least 11 murders across 4 states. But his body was never recovered. Some believed he died in the fire. Others believed he faked it just like before. For Rachel, life became a constant cycle of fear and grief. She moved states, changed her name, and raised her children in secrecy. She rarely gave interviews, but in one she did with a small local paper, she said, "I loved a man who didn't exist, and I'm still scared that one day he'll come back to remind me." Sometimes, evil doesn't come from the shadows. Sometimes, it lives in the person who kisses you goodnight, who sits at the dinner table, who laughs with your children. Daniel Miller or Ethan Graves proved that some monsters don't just hide in the dark. They learn to mimic the light. And while police believe the Hollow Route Killer's story ended in the woods that night, a new file arrived at the Maple Hollow Police Department just 6 months later with no return address. Inside was a single flash drive, and on it, 1 minute of footage dated that same week. The video showed a man's gloved hand adjusting a camera, and in the background, the faint sound of children laughing. Authorities never released what was on the rest of that drive. To be continued. If this story shook you, make sure to subscribe to Cold Case Secrets, where we uncover the truth behind the world's darkest mysteries. Thank you for watching Cold Case Secrets.